Thank you.
Rupert, it's Simon here again. I think Alenka was not suggesting that entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship were the same. I think she was just suggesting that intrapreneurship was a way of getting to your first million. So that was the point I think she was making. To your point,
I think that is true. But I just go further and draw a distinction between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. I don't think
you are right, and there is a very clear distinction having been in both camps.
Yeah.
But what I would say for, I will say the younger generation, because I'm the older generation now, that I do believe between your 20s and your 30s, you can be a bit of a free spirit.
Yeah.
You've got the opportunity to move around and change your profession, like Misha has done, clearly. I think between your 30s and 40s, you've got to be hawk-like on your instincts and have a bit of a laser focus on where you want to actually end up and apply your skill base. And that's for the purposes of getting to the title of this session, which is how to get to your million. Because I think in your 40s, between your 40s and your 50s, that's where you start to make the cash and for that to come through. But I do make a case for entrepreneurship, because what I think you've just touched on is this argument about experience. And experience, I think, is at the core of a number of things that are required in the entrepreneurial world that you can gain in the entrepreneurial world. And I think Daniel is an example of that, where if you're with a corporate that has the opportunity to move you around, and I'm assuming that you've got some talent that makes you eligible to move around, and move into 3 or 4 different areas within that corporate environment and head it up. You can get some shares and some options that actually kind of elevate your salary level. You can then work out whether any of those areas are for you, as Daniel has described, and you can jump out into that entrepreneurial world. So I do think experience, particularly in post-COVID, is going to be a vital ingredient. If you can do that in the entrepreneurial world, I think that's well worth suggesting.
Yeah, and I'd agree with all of that. And I'd take it a bit further, actually. I would argue, and as I tell my students this in the classroom, that part of the real challenges of entrepreneurship is coming across an entrepreneurial opportunity. And for some of you, I don't care how entrepreneurial you are as an individual, you're never going to see a decent entrepreneurial opportunity. That's just called Sod's Law. I think you're far more likely falling off the back of an LBS, MBA or MIM or whatever program to come across an entrepreneurial opportunity. Indeed, those of you who are on executive programs, going back to your employer, one thing I would always be wary of is slipping into where you were before. You'd be saying to your employer, look, this is who I am. I look the same, but I am different. I've got different thoughts. I'm a different resource to you. Let me loose on something new, please. And now is my now is an opportunity for you to make entrepreneurial use of me, because that's what I want to do. And I think it's more likely that LBS grads in particular will start their entrepreneurial career as a consequence via an entrepreneurial route. So I think that's absolutely right. If anybody has questions.
Yes, I have a question, please.
Go ahead, please.
Rupert, there's a question I want to ask. If, as an entrepreneur, if you want to go the route of getting a franchise, how best could you advise that should be executed?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think you've got to distinguish between franchises and franchises. I would argue that many examples of franchises offer opportunities for owner management, yes, but in many ways they are different ways of structuring packages for senior management in major international corporations. They are quite a long way from being entrepreneurial, let alone entrepreneurial. They're a way for the international corporation to roll out a rapid growth strategy rather than the provision of entrepreneurial opportunity for the people who are taking on the franchises. I think there's a distinction between that and another scenario which I would draw for you. You go to a business in, I don't know, California, and you think, this is interesting. We could do some of this in Brazil. I want to copy you. I want to do what you're doing in Brazil. Now, look, business in California, I'm having a conversation with you. Could we work together on me setting up a business in Brazil that's taking a lot of your ideas, learning from the risks and mistakes that you have made? And look, business in California, you've got a choice. You can either work with me or not. Yeah. If you don't work with me, I'm going to do it anyway, because I think it's a good idea. But it's in my interests to do it with you rather than without you. And if you're interested in opening up in Brazil, maybe it's in your interests to work with me as well. And there's a difference here between the big international corporation who's got the depth of resource to be able to roll out these things anyway. You're talking to a business in California that I'm imagining that hasn't got that depth of resource, that's doing its best to get itself established in California. And what in effect you're doing is establishing a replication play, a copycat play with the help of the business in California. And the important distinction here is that when you set up in Brazil in that second circumstance, you are able to create and preserve so much more of the equity value yourself. It's yours. It's not the businesses in California. It's yours. Whereas if you establish a franchise for McDonald's in Brazil, so much of the value is not yours. It's going back to McDonald's. You might call yourself a franchisee, but franchisee in the second instance is a very different mindset and a very different value creation exercise than franchisee in the first instance. What I conclude from all of that, when you're setting yourself up as a franchisee, or when you're looking at a franchising proposition as a franchisee, you've got to say to yourself, am I getting a real chance to participate in equity value here, to own the value that I am creating? Or am I really just I'm being cynical here, a decently paid middle manager who's got a bit of a bonus on the side, who's part of rolling out somebody else's plan? Who's in control here? And if I extend that a little bit further, I think some of that thinking also applies to this entrepreneurship thing. As an entrepreneur, who's really in control here? Can I call the shots? Or am I really being pushed around according to somebody else's agenda? So there's some parallels there with that type of thinking.
Okay. Can I ask a second question? Are there any books that you could probably advise if someone intends to get into a sort of a franchise agreement where it could guide you with respect to negotiating a deal?
Well, I can't think of a book off the top of my head. There's a lot of stuff on the web about franchises and franchisors and franchisees that you can dig up free of charge without buying books. That's not to say there isn't a book. It's just that there isn't a book that I am aware of. It's not a subject I teach directly in the classroom. Otherwise, I'd have that stuff at my fingertips. So there's certainly people I could point you towards, but if you put that question out there, I'm sure somebody will be able to help you with some titles.
Yeah, I teach a session on franchising
Hello.
at the Bowie.
Whichever group I go to, you come around with me. It's great, this.
Yeah, I think I'm here. There's hundreds of people. So I'm more than happy to give references to anyone interested in franchising.
There you go.
Yeah, I can send you an email.
That'd be great, yeah.
There you go. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
And thank you all to the professors. We've come to the end of the show. You've all been outstanding. The feedback's been enormous. So thank you to the professors. Thank you to the audience. Lots of thought-provoking insights there. And see you next time. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. And it's very lucky for all of us to be part of LBS. And thank you for your time this evening. So thank you.
When is the next one, Stephanie?
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Stephanie.
We'll email the schedule of events later. So there's 7 different subject areas at LBS. And we go for a panel for each of the subject areas. So the first one we did was organizational behavior. This one has been strategy and entrepreneurship. And then we've got finance, marketing, accounting, and so on thereafter.
That is okay. There was one question. Okay, yeah.
That's all right. That's all good for you.
Yeah, it was good. The question is, many times people say that I want to do business, but I don't have enough money. How do you answer that?
Well, you either go into a business that doesn't need a lot of money, or you find somebody who's got the money, who's prepared to put the money into you.
Very good
Part
answer.
of the secret of being an entrepreneur is to not spend your own money anyway, it's to spend somebody else's money. There are people with money looking for people like you who've got an idea. I think that's
one of the best people who've got money is customers. So
yeah,
if you can pre-sell, make sales before. If you look at Elon Musk, he just sold $10 billion worth of Cybertrucks that don't exist.
So I have. I'm glad that we have a faculty and a non-faculty on board. And the other day, I had this discussion with Stephanie, and I noticed that most of the successful entrepreneurs, had not completed their formal education in a university.
There's time for me yet to drop out.
Yes. So, and in my mind, I think, is there something in education that is anti-entrepreneurial? What's his name? Travis, Uber's founder. This guy, the secret of being an entrepreneur is finding ways that don't exist. And in education, you're put on a track and you're taught a certain way and to follow a certain rule. So you don't look at paths that don't exist. So what do you think, Daniel and Professor Merson? Do you guys think that...
Just let me take that first, as I'm on the inside of the business course. So I've got some prejudices here, and so let me exercise them first. Look, the tiny minority of entrepreneurs who've got MBAs, but the tiny minority of human beings who've got MBAs, let's be frank about it. The real issue is that whether having an MBA or not, it improves your chances of, as an entrepreneur, or generalizing it, whether having an education or not improves your chances of being an entrepreneur, or whether having an education improves your chances of anything on this planet. I would suggest that it does. If I had to choose between not having an education and having one, I'd have an education every time. But then I'm preaching to the converted here, aren't I? Then I'd be saying to myself, well, to what extent does the education that I have increase my chances of being an entrepreneur? And do I need to queer the pitch somehow to give myself that extra special twist that gives me that ever special entrepreneurial opportunity as a consequence of my business school education? And one thing that I often surprise students with is, look, don't impress me by saying, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, because you'll probably change your mind. Don't impress me by saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, and not only am I taking your elective, I'm taking every other goddamn entrepreneur elective that school has got to offer as proof that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, because I'll turn around and say, what a waste of an education. If you are really serious about entrepreneurship, yeah, do an elective on entrepreneurship, but do your other electives and things that you don't know about at all yet. Run your finger down the elective list and look at something that's in a subject that you didn't even know existed before you ran your finger down that list of electives. Because that's what education is. It's taking your mind to a different place. Now I'll go on to the next step, taking your mind to a different place. I can't think of a better preparation for entrepreneurship than that. Can you?
Interesting. Daniel?
I think maybe it was just impatience, that as soon as I had a little taste of business and ideas, I was just impatient to go out and do something. I had a very difficult time in university, in the sense that I was working 3 jobs that were horrible jobs and trying to learn at the same time. And I didn't have any real financial support for me. So I was delivering pizzas, working behind a bar, and on the weekends knocking on doors, setting appointments for salespeople. And it was just incredibly difficult and unsustainable. And when I was offered an opportunity to go and be part of a startup, it just felt like a much better option. Ironically, now that I've gone and built several businesses, I'm really drawn to the idea of doing an MBA. I actually, it's something I've toyed with.
Yeah.
There's something about formalizing the knowledge and formalizing the mindset. I have almost a new level of respect for the academic path, And I think, look, a lot of people drop out of university simply because, you know, university is a great place to meet a co-founder, have an idea, and then the thing with youth is you've kind of got this, you know, it doesn't matter so much if we drop out, fail, start again, come back and do it again. So it's actually kind of a set of circumstances that it makes sense that a lot of entrepreneurs have dropped out. I would say that there's probably a huge number of people who dropped out, tried something, it didn't work out for them, so they came back and refinished their qualification. But you only hear about the ones that dropped out and went to the moon.
But, I agree with all of that, Dan. Absolutely, and your experience is a great example to many other people. And I'm just building on that. I mean, history is full of people who didn't go to university, who did go to university, who dropped out. I think I've got a problem with that. Just the language there. There's a fundamental assumption in any educational thing that unless you get to the end of it, unless you get to the certificate that's a consequence, that you haven't benefited from the education that you've gone through.
That's a really good point.
That's just not true.
The purpose of the experience might have been 12 months to get the key piece of knowledge and the key co-founder that you met, and a university did its job.
That's right. I agree. That's right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think.
Now the question is, having you being successful entrepreneur, or also let's say also having made millions and all, what will you look when you, let's say when you say that you will be interested in doing MBA?
What would you gain? Yeah.
Look, I have hunches about business that I would love to access the formal training around some of the hunches that I've got. I like the idea. Look, as someone who's a dropout, I like the idea of kind of having, validating some of my knowledge and actually having a qualification. I literally don't. I just barely have a high school certificate. So having an MBA would be probably something I could be proud of.
Come on, Danny. Let's drop in, not drop out. Let's do it together.
Yeah, well, I could start a new movement of drop in. University drop in. So, but I just, for me personally, I think that I have a lot of, when you've had a successful venture, you kind of have selection bias that you think that you're smarter than you actually are because it worked. And it would be really powerful to go and actually look at some of the research and find out what really works and predictably works, and just to validate some of the hunches and find out what you did do well and what you didn't do so well.
That's such another good, Daniel. You're fairly good points, and I'm just building on that a bit further. Part of the problem teaching entrepreneurship in a business school is that you have people who are success stories queuing up to talk to students, but the reality of entrepreneurship is that 75% of entrepreneurs fail, and that's business school entrepreneurs. Does that mean that they're stupid? No. Does it mean that they're badly educated? No. Does that mean they've done the wrong thing or the right thing? Who's to say? Because you can't rewrite history. But certainly when I'm teaching entrepreneurship, I work hard at bringing failures into the classroom. Self-confessed. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to create a business. It hasn't worked for reasons X, Y, and
also,
Z.
I think too, so the other one to bring in would be people who were moderately successful. So, the person who wanted to start a business that went to 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, but got themselves to 2 million, and now have a business that does 300,000 or 400,000 a year profit, but they've hit a wall, and they've also, for really smart reasons, they've decided to maintain a lifestyle boutique business. And what walls did they hit, type thing.
Yes, and building on that great imperative thing, which is something we touched on a little bit in our conversation earlier. But you don't need to. What's your definition of success? Well, again, it's different for different people. Part of the problem with the entrepreneurial space is that we've got one-dimensional ways of measuring what it is that's been successful, and it is a way that's predicated on a Silicon Valley venture capital sort of mindset. I do like the fact
which, by
that
the way, are some of the most unhappy entrepreneurs I've ever
Yes, that's right. That's right. So I do like in the last few years, and I do think over the next few years, and hopefully in perpetuity, but that's a fond dream, that entrepreneurship is increasingly being associated with other forms of other definitions of creating value. You know, this whole notion of social entrepreneurship. I hate the label, but all it does is remind us that you can use the entrepreneurial mindset to add different sorts of value on this planet.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, well, great. If you don't want to do that, great. You know, it's different ways of doing it in different ways. It's not just about being driven by the financier's mindset. Financiers are easy. They've got one objective: make money. Entrepreneurs are different, a lot more complicated, want to do other things. Money's part of it, of course.
That's a great point. And there's different breeds of this animal. So the Silicon Valley is the most kind of glorified king of the jungle type breed. But the person who builds the sustainable family business, a family business is a great business. You know, a business that does 10 million in revenue, 1 million of profit, and provides good jobs for the family, and has a sustainable business model that'll be around 30 years, 40 years from now, is actually a cracking good business that doesn't get enough glory. Yeah. As you say, the social entrepreneur model, the happiest entrepreneurs that I find, if I was to churn out a sausage machine of very happy entrepreneurs, it's an 8-person team. It's a semi-famous within a niche, well-known author, speaker, in some way elevated status within their field, with about 7 or 8 people running around them, and kind of the 1 to 2 million of revenue, 200,000 to 400,000 of profit, and a lot of fun, freedom, and flexibility, and a lot of latitude within their niche to have a good time and be creative. And they don't grow it beyond that. And actually, that is the happiest entrepreneur I see over and over and over again. What I call the lifestyle boutique. Yeah,
I like it. Look, guys, I got to go and have dinner now, else I'm going to be in trouble. So I'm going to have to disappear.
Cheers, Rupert.
Thank you for that. Good to talk to you, Daniel.
So now that it's getting tough, you're leaving, Rupert. Yeah,
I'm leaving now. That's absolutely. You know me. Always run for the hills.
Rupert, thank you very much. You've been
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Pleasure, guys. Absolute pleasure. I've got another 5-10 minutes. If it's up to you, if you want to finish it off, or if you want to do another question, I'm fine. Sure. Either way.
I'm interested. I mean, a lot of people talked about, let's say, millionaires or entrepreneurs having this miserable life and all. But I believe that if you have this passion and purpose in life, and then you are trying to build business around that, then this kind of miserable life doesn't come into picture. So what's your purpose, or what's your passion?
Suresh, I can only tell you, let me be brutally honest with you. I have had the most cracking fun time since the beginning. Yeah. It's not fashionable to say it, but basically since the moment I started my business, I've had so much fun. I launched my business by renting a 4-story townhouse, and we threw parties nonstop every weekend. It was the party house. I built the team up to about 17, 18 people, and it was, all of us were under 30. We were all partying on the weekends, going and having these, we'd hire out a booth at a club, and then we'd it was an epic way to spend my 20s. I traveled the world. I had an amazing time. It was actually a really great time. It's been hard and it's been demanding, but a lot of careers are hard and demanding. It's not fashionable to say that I've enjoyed my entrepreneurial journey, but I really have. In my 30s, I got to purpose, and I decided what I wanted to do with my life is to develop 10,000 entrepreneurs who stand out, scale up, and make a positive impact in the world by championing a United Nations global goal. And basically, I wanted to create 10,000 businesses that do something to make a dent in the universe, to solve some sort of a meaningful problem that humanity needs solved.
Yes.
That I love. I adore that. I do that. I'm up to my elbows in people who resonate with that vision. In the below age 30, it was all about parties. It was just party. Great restaurants, great nightclubs, great travel. I was an Instagram kind of person before Instagram existed. Luckily, thank God for that. Thank God that none of the photos exist. But yeah, I've had a great time, and I've had a lot of purpose, a lot of meaning. I've balanced it with family. I've met the partner. You know, my wife and I have a great relationship. Like it actually hasn't been that hard. Everyone's talking about it being so hard. It's not that hard.
Do you have a cure or a drug for fear of taking the next step? Fear
no,
of
just take next step.
Quitting the job and you know, taking up this. You know, everyone has this idea of
MJ. My answer, unfortunately, is that I started with nothing, so I didn't have I had nothing to lose. I don't know, to be perfectly honest, I don't know that I would take an existential risk anymore. So, look, I take risks now, and I'm sure you could take these types of risks too, MJ. But like, for example, I just started a new company, and I could have put the money in myself, but instead I raised £300,000 from Angel Investor Network. We diluted effectively 10% of the stock, maybe just a little over 10%. So from day one, with a pitch deck, we've got 20 great angel investors who have put in the money, or not quite, but 15 angel investors who have put in the money, and we have £300,000. And then I've literally put in place some really epic people on the team. And I've actually, on that particular venture, I've taken the role of chairperson, and I've hired a CEO straight into the business from day one. So, but the interesting thing with that deal is that is my most recent million, technically, because the valuation is, 2.5-3 million. But no risk, no existential threat. It's a cool spin-off venture. You can check it out. It's called scoreapp.com. It's a data marketing business that I've launched. But so there comes a point, I suppose, in your career where you can actually take unrisky risks, and hopefully I think fear is two things. Number one, fear is doing something that's unfamiliar. So in some way, if you can increase familiarity with it, so if you can somehow get around it, if you can somehow increase the familiarity. So for example, I rightfully should be fearful of getting on a motorbike because I don't know how to ride one, but I'm sure there are ways to familiarize myself with a motorbike slowly to get over that fear. And maybe the fear is actually maybe the fear in that case is a very intelligent fear. In the same way, for someone who has an established house and family and dependents, it's probably irresponsible to just throw away a really good dependable income in order to go and start a venture that may or may not work. And I think the fear is probably justified. It's probably a smart thing to be fearful, and there must be a way to familiarize or de-risk the venture in some way. And maybe it is that, maybe the de-risking is just negotiating with the employer to do half a day a week off, or or taking a little sabbatical or something like that. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be fearful, especially if you've got something to lose or if you've got dependents.
That's great. I mean, I don't know if anyone has a question. I'm feeling greedy, and I want to ask another question.
I just have.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Just on the, I think Daniel, we were having conversation, and we had to switch rooms. So my question was regarding the building team. So let's say I found my niche area where to work. So how about I should go about building the team?
The first 4 or 5 people that you hire tend to be just anyone who can breathe. And it's just anyone who's dumb enough to join your venture, or they tend to be consultants who you're just paying them their day rate and they're happy with their day rate. And you're just basically winning the work first, factoring in their day rate plus a margin. And you might simply just negotiate, if I can give you long-term work, can I get a reduction in the day rate? But as far as people actually physically joining your team and becoming full-time on the team, the first 4 or 5 are normally, their only qualification is that they have time available, because no one intelligent is going to join your startup. One of the hardest points in business is when you hit about 12 people and you end up with 5 or 6 people who are hired because you can afford them and you've actually gotten some traction, and you end up with these people who have a qualification, experience, and they're quite intelligent and they can see where this is going. And you then try and mix them with the first 4 or 5 who are basically people who you roped in. I've roped in people from McDonald's. I've roped in people from O2, like selling mobile phones. I've roped in, do you know, one of the people I roped in onto my team, I went to a charity event where it's ex-offenders, ex-prisoners coming out of jail. And this young guy struck me as just awesome and focused and wanting to turn his life around. And, you know, he's just done 2 years in prison for drug dealing. I thought to myself, if he can sell drugs, he can sell anything. Let's get him on the sales team. And I put him on the sales team, right? And the point is that in the early stages of business, you rope people in either against their will or against their judgment. And then the difficult point is you then have to somehow fire some of those early people on the team because they're not qualified anymore once you hit about 10, 12, 15 people. And unfortunately, you're going to have to get rid of those first few hires. Mostly you have to get rid of.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
My question I was going to ask, how do you hire? Is there, I mean, you mentioned you hired a CEO. What do you look for? Does it depend?
It's a sales pitch. You are pitching, you are selling a dream. And you know, like for example, you go to a McDonald's and you complain about the burger, and the manager you ask, can I speak to the manager? And you say to the manager, listen, if you can run a McDonald's, you can run a startup. I want you to join my team. I know nothing about you other than that you're the manager that they thought to bring out for a difficult customer. I need someone who has your training. I want to pay you more money. I want to pay you your base plus your performance. I want you to quit your job and come work with me. And I want you to come and join this crazy startup. Otherwise, you're going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's surrounded by teenagers. Like, come on, come with me, come join the team. But essentially, you're not hiring in the early days. You're not actually hiring someone. You're pitching, selling, begging someone to take a massive risk and come and do 6 months with you. Maybe one of the things you can do is you can somehow do a launch event or a launch campaign and just rope people in to help you for the launch campaign, and hopefully the bug bites them enough. But you tend to, students, McDonald's workers, Starbucks workers, phone sales people, anyone who's got a shitty job but they still have a little bit of spark, like amazing people to hire. And you basically want to take them off to the side and say, quit your job and come and work with me on this crazy, stupid startup idea.
Suresh, sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
Thanks,
My
Dan.
question is, they say failure is the biggest, let's say, the teacher in life. What was your biggest failure? What was the lesson?
In the last financial crisis, my business was essentially based upon 2 famous people that I brought to the UK. I had a £4 million a year business where I had a best-selling author and speaker from the US who I brought into London. I had a best-selling author and speaker from Australia, Singapore that I brought into London. And I would run 1/4 of a campaign for one speaker, and then we'd alternate speakers. And I would essentially do these quarterly tours, and we were making about 2 million per speaker by bringing them into the UK. And when the financial crisis hit, the guy from the US dollar went through the roof, and I couldn't afford to bring him to the UK anymore. The numbers didn't work. And the guy in Asia, his business almost went into collapse in Asia, and he didn't want to come to the UK anymore. And we basically had to part ways. I suddenly found myself with a business that was doing 4 million that literally had no product anymore, nothing. And then I discovered that essentially all I was a broker. I was a brokerage model business. And I realized my biggest mistake was that I'd spent 10 years building a brokerage model business and not understanding what it is to formalize an asset. Had I had a little bit of academic training, understanding intellectual property, proprietary asset, defensible asset, essentially I was making money because I was the local promoter for 2 really cool, successful guys. And as soon as I didn't have 2 cool, really successful guys to promote, I had no business at all. So I had 15 staff that had to be fired. I plowed through 400,000 worth of cash like that, with payroll and offices and some marketing campaigns that went awry. So I almost got wiped out in the financial crisis of 2008-9. And it made me discover the value of proprietary assets, the value of owning your own asset in the business, software, media, technology, brand, intellectual property, culture, owning all of that, formalizing all of that. And it was interesting. I went from having a business that was worth, low 7 figures to having a business that was worth close to 10 million pounds in a matter of 3 years, as soon as I got that distinction.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Can I just say, since it's just us, that I studied with Daniel and you changed my life. So I just want to say thank you very much, Daniel.
Thanks,
You've been
Steph.
an outstanding mentor to me.
I hope I've changed your life for the better.
Yes, yeah. Well, on reflection. No, you have. You gave me clarity that I needed, because having passion and power and energy and moxie isn't enough. You need a clear plan, and you gave me that clear plan. It's worked out very well for me, and it continues to do so. And yeah, there's
brilliant.
There's to be said for taking everything, all of the knowledge, and then just telling me you don't need steps 1 to 10. You just need 2, 6, and 8 in this order. And you don't need to understand electricity. You just need to know which flicks to switch in order for the light to come on. Cool. And you gave me that clarity, and I can't thank you enough, Daniel. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you by the way, total bucket list moment for me to speak at LBS. So thank you.
Oh wow, really?
That's amazing.
Completely. It's London Business School. It's like one of the top business schools in the world. It's like, complete bucket list item.
No, we understand that. Actually, a lot of people really wanted to talk to you or wanted to ask a lot of questions, and we realized that we could not do justice properly. So maybe we can, if you are open, we can have another session.
Anytime you want to do another session, it's totally great. I geek out on this stuff in a big way. I love talking business, and the professor who had all the research, God, I would just pick her brains for days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
By the way, anyone who knows a professor who wants to crunch some data, I have 65,000 surveys from entrepreneurs.
Give me that data. Give me that data. I can do that for you.
Because basically, if there's insights in that data that would be relevant for entrepreneurs, I would love to be able to work with LBS in some way, or someone to crunch the data. We have tons of data, like tons and tons and tons of data.
Data crunching is not a big deal. No problem.
Cool. Well, you could interrogate.
Daniel, he's a quant. He's an asset. Honestly, I've just befriended. I can't believe they let me in. Why don't we get you in? I've left the door open.
But yeah, so Suresh,
drop in.
Get in touch with me. I'll put my email address in the chat. But basically, yeah, if you want to play around with a huge data set of entrepreneurial stuff,
I can assure you that your data is not huge enough. I work at Exchange, and we have billions of records every day.
My data is bigger than yours.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Truly enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, Daniel. Really helpful. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Daniel.